All right, welcome back. Let's do stage 4 and 5. So, stage 4, what we see is that a country is going to start to see the age as birth rates and death rates reach a new and much lower equilibrium. This is going to be the lowest we'll see birth and death rates. So, basically, modern medicine is very, very good. It's very advanced. And again, most people are going to start to have a smaller number of children because of the economic pressures and economic issues that you have with having lots and lots of kids. So dependency again is going to start to swing towards the elderly because what we are going to start to see here is decrease in the number of people being born, but a longer lifespan. So more and more people are going to be in this elderly population, which we talked a little bit about yesterday. And as those elderly populations start to increase, we see that it's going to be very, very hard for them to pay for the services and the medicine and the healthcare and the housing that they're going to need in their future. So the economy is still strong, but the growth rates are starting to slow down. And it's because you don't have so many workers that are going to be involved in your economic system anymore. Because again, I've got a smaller number of workers and a larger number of people that they're going to have to support. So we're going to start to see that we have not a dramatic, but a little bit of decrease inside of our economic growth. This is where we're already starting to see in the UK, okay? So we're starting to see a lot of contraction in the United Kingdom, which is going to be one of the reasons why they're trying to get out of the European Union, trying to protect domestic markets because of this disparity that you have in your elderly population. All right, so what actually does this all mean, okay? There are some limitations to this demographic model. These are a whole bunch of predictions that are going to be made on what has already happened in the past, but you don't really know any new variables that could be thrown into the mix here that can actually change what your outcome is. So we have no really true idea what stage 5 looks like. This is what we think stage 5 will look like. We think that birth rates are going to continue to fall and death rates are going to rise, but not as fast as birth rates are falling, which is going to lead to a dramatic increase in aging and a shrinking population. We are seeing that, but we still have not kind of gotten out of stage 4 yet. So no one knows how or where this downward spiral is actually going to end. Is it going to be that you are going to start to see new configurations of countries? Are you going to start to see countries either take over or invade other countries for now issues of population? You have large youth workers, you don't have jobs, but I have jobs available. Do I try to annex you? Do we do some sort of worker exchange program? Do we have migration issues? Do I have migrant workers come in and get granted citizenship or semi-citizenship or a portion of citizenship that would be attractive for them to come to leave their homeland and go to another country to provide the workforce for a developed nation? We don't know how all of this works. We don't know if that is actually going to be accepted, or are we actually going to only increase our ethnic or religious and racial divide by having an influx of new people coming in? And then how does that actually look in terms of your political system? Do they have the right to vote? Do they not have the right to vote? Do they have access to resources? Do they don't have access to resources? All of that has to be figured out. And how you actually figure it out is going to determine the outcome of stage 5. So, where does that leave us all? Where does the world actually stand? Where are we heading with this population demographic model? And as you can see through the graphic on your screen, that the total fertility rates are starting to drastically decrease. We see all this blue. You hardly actually see any red anymore as we get close to our 2050. So our whole entire talk about Mathis, our whole entire talk about Eldridge, our whole entire talk about the Club of Rome, maybe it is not going to happen. Maybe our growth fertility rates are going to get so low as everyone strives to become industrialized that you're not going to have these issues of population. But what you are going to potentially still have is the issue of urban population and the effect of pollution because of such a large urban population. But again, we don't know yet because no one has gotten there, and we don't really truly know how this is all going to look in the future. All right, so just to go back again, recap all these stages really nice and quickly. What you have in stage one, outside the isolated group of hunter and gathering tribes, nobody's there, okay? What you see is, again, very, very few people living currently in stage one, where, again, they don't have enough modern medicine, and they don't have, they still have high infant mortality rates. But what you do see, basically, is almost very, very few isolated groups that are going to be stuck inside of this stage one. As we move on to stage two, again, very, very poor. You're still living in rural areas. You're still stuck in the early stages of stage two, which means people are having lots and lots of kids. Again, that early marriage age of 14 extends your fertility, and that is going to extend the number of children you have. So high childhood dependency during this rate. However, most of the developing world is starting to see a drop in fertility rates because they're trying to push past this stage and get into what we consider to be industrial country. When that happens, you urbanize. And when you urbanize, again, I find out that having the 5 children is not as effective as having 1.7 because now, again, I have to pay for all of their stuff. So now I start to see a decrease in your fertility rates. Again, however, you've got that balloon that you've got with the baby boomers after World War II, where there's still lots and lots of people, and those people are going to reach maturation, and as they do, they are going to start to have kids. Now we're going to enter into stage 3. Stage 3, assuming that we got it right and we had a something that was viable economically inside of our country and we prospered and people started to become educated, we are basically going to become, moving out of the developing world and hit the demographic dividend. And this is basically where everyone would love to stay. I have enough jobs for all the people. I've got unprecedented economic growth. Everyone's making money. My business cycle is going, and everyone has access to things. Governments don't get moving on this though. In the developing world, you may not ever get there because again, I've got that large youth population that a lot of times is disenfranchised. They don't have access to education, which they know means they're not going to have access to economic opportunities in the future. Currently, this large disenfranchised youth have not been able to get organized. If they do, we could be in a lot of trouble because some of these groups are going to turn to terrorism as an answer. If my haves will not give me access to it, I will take it violently. And that's going to be very, very dangerous if we continue continue not to give them opportunities in the future. All right, stage 4. Most of the developed world, we're hanging out in stage 4. It is something that is not necessarily great because we are trying to do this balancing act of having a very large elderly population and a small working population. So again, most of us are here. Our fertility rates have dropped below population replacement rate. So my death and my birth rates are not equal. My fertility rates is lower than my death rates. So everyone is kind of in this very slow economic growth. We don't really know if we actually are growing economically because we are worried about this large elderly population in the future. How are we going to provide for all of these programs? Social Security, Medicare, if we have universal health care, how are you going to provide for that if you don't have the workers that actually are going to be putting in the taxes to support these type of programs? So what you see is, again, the ratio of people paying in versus the ratio of people paying out is going to start to get smaller and smaller. China is somewhere in stage 4. And again, thanks to the effectiveness of their one-child policy, they went through stage 3 way too quickly. So that was the danger of the one-child policy because it was way too effective. So now what you see is I had a lot of workers that were working hard and I industrialized China and everything looked great. And then all of a sudden I got to that generation where the one-child policy was in effect and was followed, very strictly followed, and then all of a sudden I don't have these workers anymore. You need workers to keep your economy going. So basically what you have going on in China is they got old before they got rich. They never benefited from that demographic dividend. Now, what we have seen in the past in terms of the United States, in terms of the United Kingdom and countries inside of Europe, is they've been able to slowly move through that stage 3 into stage 4, and they've been able to get rich. Now we have hit stage 4, and we are seeing our economies are going to start to slow down. All right, stage 5, the unknown. How do we know what it's going to look like? We are not sure. We do think Japan is already in stage 5. It is sort of the most developed of the countries. It's kind of like the China plus. We think it's going to get there very, very soon. But there could be some things that can stop Japan from getting to stage 5. And that is basically going to be if they are able to start their population, if they are able to increase their population. Is there a way to start to convince people that it's okay to have more children? That economically you are going to be able to survive and give access to resources and schools and education and extracurricular activities if you have all of these kids. So we do see in China the reversal of the one-child policy, giving incentives, giving rewards if you have more than one child in an urban setting. But again, most people have not actually applied for the permit if they qualify. So we are going to kind of take a look at Japan as our case study of what potentially could happen to the rest of the world. But again, we are in this big, big unknown. All right, so I have not quite finished population, but I think that's enough for today. So what we're going to do on Tuesday, actually, I'm going to do this Monday. What I'm going to do on Monday, I will finish population on Monday. I literally have very, very little left on population. And then after that, we're going to move on to governance. You guys do have the articles inside of Blackboard in the governance folder for your papers. There are 3 articles there, and there's also the instructions there for your paper. I will take a portion of your class on Monday to finish notes. I will then give you the rest of the period Monday to start working on your papers, which then means you guys also are going to get a significant bit of time on Tuesday to work on your papers, which is going to be beneficial. And after that, your paper's going to be due when you walk in the door on Wednesday. In terms of time on Tuesday to work on your papers, I'm probably looking at giving you the vast majority of the period. I just have a couple things to run through in government. I've got two terms I need to go over in governance, and that's it. All right, so you guys have a really great weekend, and I will see you on Monday, and I will put in articles for current events too, so don't forget about those. All right, have a nice weekend.